Hi, Sam.
Hello.
Welcome to University Challenge, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
Oh, well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, we've had a little chat beforehand, but for the listeners today and the listeners to come, could you please share your name and what your job is today?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Samantha Hornsby, or Sam, unless you're angry at me, in which case everyone calls me Samantha. And what I do for a living. So I run a company called Eric, and in short, we help young people get into the creative industries. So that's a very short version.
Love it. Love it. Well, succinct, precise. People get what you do. Okay, we'll come on to Eric in a minute, but before we do, we'll go back in time a little bit. What are your memories of secondary school?
Honestly, I feel like I don't really have that many memories of secondary school. I think school in general has been blanked out.
Yeah,
My brain has kind of
yeah,
tried to forget it. Um, Secondary school, so high school, sixth form,
yeah,
mm, I went to a sixth form college, which was great.
yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
yeah,
But the thing that I enjoyed most, and my strongest memories, I would say, are doing art or like, the creative subjects like
yeah,
English art,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
I spent a lot of time in the art classroom badgering the poor man called Nick, who
yeah,
was our teacher.
yeah,
Uh, and I just spent all of my time doing that, and I really enjoyed it. I drawing, painting, pottery. I did a lot of pottery.
yeah,
Um, Strongest memories.
yeah. And I just had a flashback there of being banned from using the pottery wheel because
You
at,
do.
at secondary school, because me and my friends had thrown a bit of clay, but not in the pottery sense.
Oh,
And what a
okay.
waste! What a waste! Because one of my friends is now becoming a ceramicist in her late 40s, which is so cool.
That's the
Um,
great thing about pottery. There is no age limit. You can just carry on until you're like 80 if you want. It's
yeah.
amazing. So
And had you gone to sixth form? So when you were doing your GCSEs,
yeah.
had you been sort of trying to focus on the arts then, and that led you into your sixth form choices?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was desperately unhappy at school.
Mm.
I actually, my GCSE years, I have almost a bit of a memory blank about it. Like, in all seriousness, I do think
Yeah.
I have actually blanked it out for a number of different reasons. Um, I didn't like the school that I was part of. I really hated school, like in general.
Yeah.
I've never been academic, and I cannot make myself be academic. And so
Nope.
I was always told that I was stupid and that, like, I needed to go and, I don't know, study harder and do all these things. I couldn't, it wouldn't come naturally. No matter how hard I
Yeah.
tried, I was never going to do it.
Yeah.
Mm, And, that sadly, the art, the creative side of the school that I was in wasn't very nurturing, and
Yeah.
they didn't really allow me to lean into the stuff that I was like good at, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't allowed to spend that much time doing like any creative stuff.
All right.
And so honestly, it's a bit of a memory blank. Like, genuinely, I had an awful time. And also, people weren't that nice to me as well. So I feel like
Mm.
there's a little bit of bullying stuff that came in there, that has,
Yeah.
further made me blank it out in my mind. So, but yeah, I was
So,
just generally very unhappy.
and when you came to sixth form then, because that's a bruising experience, did you go to sixth form kind of away from where your secondary school was? Did you choose to go elsewhere?
Yeah, so I'm very fortuitous. The school I was in before was a boarding school, so
Ah,
I was already far away, basically, which is
yeah,
part of the reason that I hated it.
yeah,
Um, and so for sixth form, I actually moved back in. I moved back home, and so I went to a
yeah,
school really near my parents. It was
yeah,
actually very like, I guess like, uh, it was a school for people who weren't really fitting in with other
yeah,
schools, I suppose. So there was a
yeah,
certain amount of freedom that they gave you because the students had demanded it, and they didn't really have an option. So
yeah,
there were certain things that you could do, like you could smoke, like just outside the school and stuff like that. That kind of gives an image. You called all the teachers by their first names. It was
Yeah.
very like libertarian.
Yeah.
Great place, really enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
that was the place where I thrived the most because they really valued creativity as well.
Yeah. And what do you sort of see as the kind of key indicators of that? And I remember actually sixth form college I went to, I was like, what do you mean I can use your first name? It was a revelation. It was quite like
Cool.
human to human, you know.
Yeah.
Um, how did they help you? How did they help you to really like embrace your artistic talents and appetites?
I think they were open to, they recognize, again, it's that leaning into what you're good at, isn't it? I
Mm.
think if someone allows you to lean
Yeah.
into what you're good at, then, a whole world is kind of, you're unleashed into a whole new world that you would never had access to before.
Yeah.
And it was the simplicity of that.
Mm.
Nick, the art teacher, was absolutely phenomenal. He, really had this passion for people being, artists and like exploring
Yeah.
those worlds and like giving people the opportunity to be able to have access to that and also like value it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's part of, often the reason that schools don't allow people to go and pursue those kind of subjects in a more serious manner, because they don't
Yeah.
value it, and they don't
Yeah.
see that can lead you to. Whereas Nick was like really and truly kind of, open to all of these things and knew lots about the art world and all of the opportunities it could bring you. So he kind of encouraged that in the students.
Yeah.
Um, and that was something that I'd never really experienced before. At my primary school, I had a teacher called Mrs. Stir, who was actually
Yeah.
unbelievable, and she really did nurture that. But that was when you're so young that you're not really kind of considering career options and stuff. So like schools are not telling you to lean away from things. So
Yeah.
that, but anyway, that's another story.
But it's so true. And just as an aside, I went to my kids' prime when they were at primary and they lined them up when they were like 8 and said, what do you want to be? And so one boy says, policeman. And the next boy goes, policeman. uh, policeman. And they're all like, what did that boy say? And then one little girl went, mummy. And so her mum was like, I'm the best mum because my daughter wants to be a mummy. Um, I was like, why don't you want to do something else? And felt like an awful person. But yeah, so they were, leaning into just copying what the next child said or being what they saw at home.
That's it. Yeah, I think there's only
Um,
so much you can do with primary school
yeah,
kids.
it's just full of little policemen. Um,
Exactly.
so you've done sixth form. Nick's amazing.
Mm.
What was expected of you, or what did you hope to do next? Was it you're going to go to uni or not?
Yeah, so like I was very much, I mean, every school in the UK, I think, is like this, unless it's like a really unusual school. And the school that I was in definitely did still fall into the trap of the only option that you have is to go to uni. Art
Yeah.
was fine, but you've got to go to art school,
Okay.
That's the only
Right.
answer.
Yeah.
And so I I tried. I didn't get in to any art schools. It was
Yeah.
sadly, I was still very set on the idea that I wanted to be a potter. Like that was my thing. And like,
Yeah.
it was heartbreaking to be, the whole way through school, I've been told that I was stupid because,
Yeah.
I wasn't creative enough. Sorry, I was too creative, and that
Yeah.
doesn't fit into like the kind of corporate world.
Yeah.
And then I finally found this subject that I was, great at. Well, I think I was clearly the art
Yeah.
skills, but like, I really enjoyed and I had a passion for it. And I was like, like wanted to do it in my free time, which, is
Yeah.
you really want a student to be able to do, to have such a passion for something. They want to do it all the time.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get into art school and yeah, they rejected me. And I was like, I didn't realize that there was a box that I needed to kind of tick, or like, what's the format that an like
Yeah.
unconventional person needs to take. And I don't really, it's kind of ironic in a way where it's like, artists is, art schools are all very like, oh, you should be yourself, do this. It's like, but not if you're that. Like,
Yeah.
to our art school if you're that weird or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's,
And
oh, it's hard.
Is there something I'm really curious about is, let's say you're applying to art school. Does it matter where you went to college? Is there still that thing of, well, you didn't go there, so you can't come here?
What the art schools have?
Do they?
Uh, Maybe, yeah, maybe. I think it is a very privileged world. Like, I would
Right.
definitely that so many people who go to art school are very much from private schools.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually have a friend, have a friend who she also got rejected from all the art schools, and she ended up going to art school in Spain. And
Yeah.
I think ironically, she probably had the best education, and they didn't care at all. Like,
Yeah.
I think I mean, don't get me started on obviously I'm very bitter and, have a real chip on my shoulder about
Yeah.
it. I do think the art schools in the UK are, and I do mean this, like, ironically, you do have to fit into a box to be alternative enough to go there. And
Yeah.
I found, I didn't fit into that. And I was just like, it was like a, kind of dagger to my heart every time I got another rejection from another art school. It was like twisting the knife a bit more.
Yeah.
All I want to do is just do pottery. I've been
Yeah.
told this is the only way to do it. So what else do I do? Like, I have to give up the dream? Is there another option out there? It was hard. It was difficult, yeah.
And what did you do then? So, I mean, obviously, these people didn't know what they were dealing with. You know?
The opportunity they missed out on is
Yeah,
phenomenal,
I
really.
know. Um, so yeah, what did you do?
So I panicked.
Yeah.
um, I was like officially in the bracket of alternative career path, but I had no idea what that meant because no one's ever
Okay.
told me what that means.
Yeah.
Um, I was still had this kind of understanding that in order to, your next step is always going to be uni. Like, what
Yeah.
other option is there?
Yeah.
So I actually did I applied to go and do law at Leeds Art, not Leeds Art School, at Leeds Law School.
Yeah.
That would have been what I didn't get in. And I actually did get in, which was shocking. The
Yeah.
entirety of my family fell off their chairs. Like, no one could really believe it. They
Yeah.
were obviously very desperate. And tried to do that, went for less than a year. I was like, this is not the environment that I'm going to thrive in, because I wasn't good at a classroom environment. I'm definitely not going to be good in a lecture theatre without the motivation of a teacher telling me what to do. So
Yeah.
I left before the end of the first year, and I was like, that's, never going to be an option for me. And so then I just started, I guess, applying for any job that would have me. I knew that
Right.
I wanted an office job. And so I just applied to all jobs everywhere, no matter what they were. I was just applying, and I got rejected from probably about 500 jobs.
Oh God. And if you can hear a noise, it's my dog singing for his dinner. So I apologize if there's no, not he's just voicing his disgust that you didn't get your place, gone to a uni that is not right for you. There's a course that's not right for you. And were you applying for jobs that it was just I need to make a living, or was it this will give me a foot in the door to what I want to go on to do?
A foot in the door. I was like, I've got to
Right.
try something. I think the stuff that I had learned from, like, being rejected from art school, and
Yeah.
also not having my other uni type experience work out, I was like, failure doesn't really matter anymore.
No.
It's kind of liberating when you're like,
Yeah.
when you realize that actually you get knocked down, you just pick yourself back up again. Like, and I
Yeah.
started to see that there were other options out there. I realized, I think, quite quickly that, like, a big company was never going to take someone like me, because
Hmm.
at the time it was very much, if you didn't have a degree, then we wouldn't consider
Yeah.
you. It would literally be on a job description, degrees only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily, that isn't the case anymore, and, like, thank God. But I started to kind of understand that actually, my alternative career path story does
Yeah.
fit with a certain community. It's just
Yeah.
I've never really been told that that community exists. And that's
Yeah.
the startup world. That's small companies who are quite scrappy,
Yeah.
who need people like me who are just like, I will do whatever job, like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm so there for it. And I
Yeah.
think that is the mistake that a lot of people end up making often, is that they don't know about the other options out there other than the massive companies.
Yeah.
I had to learn that, and I did that quite quickly, which is good.
And that is, and it's exactly, so I just sort of had quite a light bulb moment there, and and it is that fail fast. You fail
Yeah,
fast, you go again, you fail fast, which is exactly the startup, entrepreneurial,
yeah.
agile working spirit. And where did you land then when you got your first kind of job?
Yeah, so I started working. I applied for a job on Gumtree, which I would
Yeah,
not recommend anyone do. It's a dangerous place in this day and age, I think.
yeah,
Just be careful. Um,
yeah,
but what's great, I think, about platforms, not like Gumtree, but similar ones now, is that you
yeah,
often have companies who don't really have much budget. So they tend to be
right,
quite small and quite scrappy themselves anyway, startup vibes.
yeah.
They use those kind of platforms to advertise for jobs because they don't have any money to spend on a jobs platform. Like,
Yeah, because I thought people just sold dogs on gum trees.
yeah, you
Gumtree.
would, most of them do. I had to look
Right.
quite hard for the job
Yeah.
description.
Yeah. Dogs,
Um,
dogs, dogs, dogs. Ah,
yeah,
job. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Um, so there's like Twitter. I would say if anyone's looking for a job right now, Twitter's a great place to look. Lots of companies, small companies who don't have budget to put out,
Ah,
job adverts, they use platforms like Twitter to advertise because it's free.
right.
So
Yeah.
it's entry level jobs.
Yeah.
Um, so I applied on Gumtree to this company called My Jam Communications.
Yeah.
I had no idea they were PR. I was like, I don't know what PR is.
Yeah.
So I had to get over my imposter syndrome pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Um, they called me in for an interview. I think they were only interviewing like one other person, and that was because they
Yeah.
needed someone so quickly they didn't have the time. And I just so
Mm.
happened to be a bit more like amiable, probably, than
Yeah.
the other. It was a ridiculously small salary, £16,000, which probably is the equivalent of about what 20,000 maybe at this
Okay.
kind of time.
Yeah.
Uh, it was in Holborn in London,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
Uh, they were all about restaurant PR. So they basically,
Um,
there were only four of them. So two founders and two other employees. And then there was
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Um, and we looked after like high-end restaurants
Yeah.
who had no idea that it was such a disaster behind the scenes at their, PR company. They clearly had too much faith in us because it was
Yeah.
chaos. um, High-end restaurants doing their Twitter,
Yeah.
doing their Instagram wasn't out at this time, so
Right.
LinkedIn I don't think was really a thing either. It was just
Facebook.
Facebook, of course Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
And writing press releases and stuff like that, which was a huge learning curve. I'd never had any experience in any of this, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know anything.
No.
So, yeah, in at the deep end, they gave me the job. I
Wow.
started like 2 days after they interviewed me.
Yeah. And how did you kind of manage to make ends meet? Like, say, did you have to relocate to London? Did you live there anyway?
Yes, so I was very lucky. I have family that live in London, so I was
Yeah.
able to. However, I did have to walk because I couldn't afford the tube. I walked an
Yeah.
hour and a half every day there and an hour and a half back.
Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't a quick commute.
No.
But I had to do that basically for the whole year and a half that I was there. And then sometimes if my parents were feeling really, I guess kind of generous,
Yeah.
6 months, they'd be like, here's an extra £100 for you to afford the tube for like 5 days because it's so expensive. And then I'd be like back to walking.
Yeah. And do you know what? You reminded me of Tom, who I interviewed, and it's the Common People connection. But he said his sort of break in fashion marketing, which was in London, he could only have done that because his family lived in the London area. He said if he had to have commuted, it just wouldn't have happened. And likewise, I think it was living on not very much and walking, just always walking.
Exactly.
Um,
It is literally, it's so lucky to be able to have someone
yeah,
in a big city who
yeah,
is family who you can stay with for free. Like that is such a privilege. And
yeah,
I didn't really complain while I was on such a small scale, because I was like, I'm so lucky to be able to do this in the first place. But
And
it cuz for like a whole year. That was it.
yeah. And what happened from there then? So got PR for restaurants, you learn about press releases, managing social media. What happens next?
So I I left my jam communications after about a year and a bit.
Hmm.
And then I went to go and work at a company called Decoded,
Yeah,
who were a tech startup
yeah,
who like wanted someone who could manage social medias and stuff like that, kind of like similar stuff. I was the second ever employee there as well. So the fact that I had been such an early stage company really worked for them, because they were
yeah,
like, someone who has worked in such a small team, because they really get it. They
yeah,
understand that structures or processes and that it is chaos. I worked there basically. Their company is amazing. They teach people how to code. There's their
yeah.
flagship course where I'm so sorry, let me just turn off my Slack, which is really annoying.
This is how I know you're creative. Just got like Slack popping up. I've never used it. Never
No,
used it.
well, I wouldn't recommend it. Um, so so I did that. I really enjoyed that. Again, basically, my Jam Communications was a great company to work at for the first year of working, but it wasn't
Yeah,
going, and it definitely wasn't growing. Whereas I started at Decoded, and it was like obviously on track to do something amazing.
yeah,
I'm so lucky to be the second ever employee there. That was unbelievable. The founders, there were 4 founders, so quite a lot. That's way more founders than
yeah.
most companies have. And there was this one woman called Catherine Parsons, who is like an advisor to the government now, and has been for like years and years and years.
Right.
She is basically pioneered like women coding and things like that, and like
Mm.
kids coding.
Yeah.
And she became this really big name, and I was able to basically work with her for basically next to her for the entirety of my
Yeah,
time. I learned so much from this woman,
yeah,
because I was able to have a front row seat at all times
yeah,
to like having big conversations, making big decisions,
yeah,
networking with people. Like, she took me under her wing for a little bit, and honestly, it was fascinating seeing her, just forging connections with people, getting PR.
yeah,
She did a phenomenal job. She's unbelievable at sales. I was so lucky. But I would
yeah,
never have got that experience if I hadn't gone into the startup world, if I hadn't shied away from looking
yeah.
at those traditional career paths and then going into a big company. Like, that's the benefit of working in a small business, is you can, like, through osmosis, get all of this information that the people that run it are doing.
Yeah, and it's so true. It's that the stuff that you learn in big corporates is how to operate in a big corporate. And I learned because I worked with small businesses while I was at Microsoft, and I learned a huge amount from their founders that I wouldn't have got anywhere else. So
Yeah.
how did those experiences kind of set you up into that when you're coming into that founder space?
I think the big thing for me that I love talking about is the fact that by surrounding myself with people who are like in that world,
Mm,
the founders as well as the other employees, who on the whole, like 90% of them went on to go and start their own businesses.
yeah,
Like, it's a world where people are like permanently taking risks in the traditional sense, or in the sense that school tells you about.
yeah,
School only tells you about one path,
yeah,
which is uni, go get a stable job where someone else is paying your salary, right?
yeah,
And everything else, they classify everything else as risky, but
yeah,
it's really not. It's just they've only normalized that specific pathway. And what I did through like working in startups is I normalized the other pathways. Someone else was paying my salary, but I was able to have a front row seat to the fact that people were running businesses, and lots of the employees left to go and run their own businesses. And it just
yeah,
totally de-risked that way of living for me. And
yeah,
when I thought about starting up my own business, it was like, oh yeah, it could be scary, but I might as well give it a go.
yeah,
It was amazing. And I think that is such a it's such a simple thing, because you're basically just like normalizing risk in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. And before we sort of get into that, how Eric was founded, was there between Decoded and Eric, is there a story to tell, or was that your next step?
Yeah, so I've like lived a couple of lives, I guess. That was my employee life, and then
Yeah.
I convinced my now business partner basically to quit her job and be a freelancer with me. We like formed a little business.
Yeah.
Um, and she was a chartered accountant at PwC, so she was on that. She went down that very like
Yeah.
kind of standard route,
Yeah.
and she absolutely hated it. She
Yeah.
wanted to be creative originally as well, like, but she was discouraged by her parents and also school.
Yeah.
And she ended up, yeah, like I say, becoming an accountant at PwC. Anyway, so I convinced her to quit that.
Yeah. How
uh,
did you do that? So I'm wondering what Catherine taught you about influencing others to make your friend quit her job.
Absolutely. I think I got her a little bit hooked by asking her to do some stuff on the side of her job, which she did.
Ah.
And then I think she kind of really began to be like, oh, actually, there is another life out there for me. This doesn't
Yeah.
have to be it forever.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to quit your job when you have someone else convincing you to do it, rather than
Yeah.
making that decision alone.
Yeah.
And so I think I definitely, she was ready to jump. She just needed to be pushed a little bit. And I think that was what I did.
Yeah. Um, so it talks to me about what Eric does.
Yes, okay. Eric has taken like a couple of different formats. So
Yeah.
the mission has always been the same, to like help young people learn about what it's like to work in the creative industries and give them the tools
Yeah.
to be able to do that, basically.
Yeah.
The first vehicle that we used was like
Yeah.
a like blog, like a online magazine, but this
Yeah.
was like 8 years ago. So it was when
Wow.
Tumblr blogs were everywhere,
Yes.
and we didn't have a good USP. Like, we were not
No.
cutting the noise. No one was finding the blog. And so we
Yeah.
ended up putting it on pause, basically. But that like was Eric in its first format. And that was
Yeah.
8 years ago. It's mad.
Wow.
Um, then the second vehicle, which actually did end up taking off, this is when Eric really began to we began to grow a business from it.
Yeah.
We decided to redo careers fairs, because we noticed that none of the careers fairs out there focused on the creative industries. This was about
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
None of them focused on the creative industries, and also they were really, really boring.
Yeah.
We were like, we can make a careers fair that people actually want to go to and focus on the creative industries.
Yeah.
So we did that, and it took off really quite quickly, and we weren't prepared for that to happen, but it ended up turning into like a proper business.
Wow.
And we had, we would have like 2,000 people signing up to the event every single time we did it. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and we had, big brands who wanted to sponsor it as well. They wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that young people were aware that their company existed as an employment option. The
Yeah.
focus of the events was always about educating young people, and again, giving them the tools to be able to take those next steps.
Mm-hmm.
And then companies basically saw it as an opportunity to, I guess, kind of promote themselves as employers.
Yeah.
It was always free for young people, and it still is.
Yeah.
So it's really important to us. So that happened. That went on. That kind of format of Eric went on until the pandemic, which
Yeah.
many of your listeners will know put an end to all of the events out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we realized that everyone was just transferring their events online. We knew that everyone was going to get event fatigue. Like, we were like,
Yeah.
that's not, And so we were like, rather than, we don't know how long this is going to go on for, and rather than just doing what everyone else is doing and doing online events, let's come up with a scalable, more efficient way of communicating what we want to communicate, but in a way where young people can access it whenever they want, wherever they want. Because that's the problem with events, is you can reach a limited amount of people in a very specific, moment in space and time,
Yeah.
in a specific location. And that you know, our ambition was bigger than just a couple of events. Like, we wanted everyone in the UK, every young person in the UK, to have access to Eric whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
So that's when we had to like pivot as a business. And we now, the current format of Eric, which is what we think will be the ever, you know, long lasting forever version, is an app, a free app for young people to download, where we give them everything that we were giving them via the events and the blog, which is access to, you know, what goes on in the creative industries, and again, the tools to be able to dip your toe in the water, take those next steps towards getting a career. So that's what we do now.
And did you have to seek investor funding to get your app up and running?
Yes. So we have had a number of investment rounds over the last 2-3 years, however long the pandemic's been going on for. Oh my God, years.
Yeah, forever. Yeah.
It could be 40 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
Investment is a very long, arduous, stressful journey. Also, rounds is a very loose term. I feel like actually important to clarify that it's not always done in rounds. It actually can just be like an ongoing drip feed of money that you're raising from various different high net worth individuals.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely fine. And so like, we've kind of been doing a little bit of both, basically. We're about around now. So.
And do you know, I follow Cindy Gallop on LinkedIn, and she shared some stats about something like 98.7% of investing goes to men. Just like, for God's sake. How does it feel is it different in the creative industry? Do you get, how do you approach that, knowing that things are stacked very unfairly? What do you do to kind of motivate yourself, put yourself in the best light?
Oh, big question. Great question. So also it's harder if you're raising for the creative industries as well, because investors do not understand how lucrative and money making the creative industries is. Everyone tends to have a pre-internet definition of the creative industry still in their heads. And so like, part of the battle is convincing people that the creative industries is super money making, and like, those investors just are behind the times. They don't want to hear that. They don't take that very well.
I wonder why. Yeah.
Two women telling old men that they don't know anything about creative. That does not sink in the way you think it will. So it's like extra hard. And then on top of that, we also, our app is free for young people, and it's all about helping people learn about the creative industries, which lots of people immediately put into the category of charity. So we've made life very hard for ourselves. However, we are convincing people, like, we've raised investment, you know, it's happening. There are a couple of things happening in the investment world that are helpful, like the creator economy, for example, is a big buzz phrase. And so the word creative is being associated more with creator economy, which investors do understand is very money making. So some of that argument has been, you know, I guess, kind of pushed to the side. But anyway, the question was actually, sorry, you can tell that I am.
No, but that's so interesting, because I think it's reminding me that, did you share a stat about the value of the creative industry is far greater than something else that was big? So I would love to know more about that. And I think it would surprise a lot of people.
I'm so glad that you asked. I have so many stats. I will reel off some quick ones. Okay, so the creative industries is actually worth 117, I think it might be 120 actually now, in the report that came out last year, 120 billion pounds to the UK economy. That is more than oil and gas, engineering, aerospace, and automotives combined. So the creative contributes more than all of those that we're so used to hearing are very rich. Like, all of those industries people wouldn't bat an eyelid at, are being like, oh, they're very, you know, lucrative. People just assume the creative industry contributes far more than all of those combined. the creative industries is growing at 5 times the rate of the rest of the UK economy. Like it's so, like it is scaling up like nothing else. And that is because everyone keeps banging on about digital skills. Over 50% of digital skills that are required for young people to enter the workforce are actually creative digital skills. So things like Photoshop, editing, content creation, social media management, like these are all in the creative industries. And then the final one that I'll leave you with, people always think the creative industries is, art, music and drama or whatever, that's it. It's actually 16 different sectors. And that's all of the classics like fashion, music, art. But it also includes things like advertising, marketing, design, media, and like really new industries like VFX and animation or gaming. Those are really been around like properly mainstream for the last like 20 years. So
and on that point, I think with gaming, certainly I know that like they are like one of the biggest users of data, creators of data, empowering a lot of the technology investments and requirements. But you don't think of it like that. Oh,
it's
I love it.
like it's so funny because I've been investigating this space for so many years now. I know exactly what the problem is. The creative industries have done a terrible job of communicating how much they've changed. Like it's as simple as that. And then as a result, everyone is inheriting a perspective of what their parents think the creative industries looks like because their parents don't know any better. They haven't been told. And kids obviously listen to what their parents say, which makes sense, and teachers around them and stuff like that. But the adults, it's not their fault. It's that they haven't been equipped with up-to-date information and they have outdated perspectives. And now young people we need to like intercept the messaging, and that's what I'm trying to do with Eric.
And actually, there's something in there, and it was a question that I'd kind of written down about making money as a creative. And I know people who are artists. Someone I used to work with, he had to have a job for 20 odd years, and now he is an artist full time and is living his kind of dream and selling great work and putting on exhibitions. And I think I had thought, and perhaps incorrectly, that you can't and yet now I do make money as a creative, but I think I'd thought, as you say, it's really, really hard to make money if you are a creative individual, but
Yes.
not so.
And that is not your fault. Again, like it's not your duty to go and like, do
Yeah,
research on the creative industries when it's not part, it's not
yeah,
in your job or in your remit or whatever. Like that's the job of the creative industries. And there are
yeah,
organizations out there whose job it is literally to communicate the wealth of the creative industries. It's
yeah,
how like inefficient they've been at communicating that. STEM,
yeah,
like the STEM industries, I always think are amazing in terms of a
yeah,
blueprint for how you can communicate the
yeah,
breadth of jobs, the how lucrative it is, all of these like interesting training things and stuff like that. Look at how much people are talking about STEM now, and they weren't 15 years ago. And that's because
no,
the industries have done such a good job of communicating that to parents, students, teachers, schools, all of these things. They've put
yeah,
time and effort into making sure that they are valued as a sector, and the creative
yeah,
industry is permanently being weighed down, I would say, by the misunderstanding that it's not the arts. The arts is
yeah,
of the creative industries, but the creative industries haven't done anything to disrupt that message or that misconception. Oh my God,
yeah.
going on this, the frustration you can feel is real.
I know, but I think that's a really great way to put it. To say like the creative industries is not just the arts,
Yeah.
and I think that would open people's eyes. It would really open people's eyes. And I know I went to talk at a school, and I was saying how I do a lot of writing for tech leaders, do a lot of ghost writing. And then I was talking to them about copywriting, things like that. And one of the girls was like, well, how does that fit with tech? And I was like, right, like companies have websites.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, but somebody has to write that stuff. Then yeah, yeah. Unless like ChatGPT just ruins everything. But
Quite possibly. Yeah.
yeah, so that's quite it's really interesting to me. So if you've got someone the young person creatively minded, they can use the Eric app and how would they, and what I'll do is I'll put links to this in the show notes. What's your idea? Because I guess when you create an app, you have to create a journey. But what journey does the young person go on when they look at Eric, and how does it help them navigate where they want to go?
Yeah, great question. The journey that they go on at the moment is do you want from, where they find us, or like when
Yeah,
they
I
go
guess
from the app?
let's assume they've got the app because every young person in the UK has got it. Uh, every young
Manifest,
person.
I love it.
Yeah. What happens next?
Okay, so they go on the app, they can do three things on the app. They
Mm.
can explore, upskill, and then get some sort of access to work. So they can explore the creative industries. What does that mean? What are the 16 different industries? Like, how do I get access? What are the different pathways in, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Upskill is dip your toe in the water. So we're
yeah,
actually, the data is showing us that people are enjoying this section the most out of
yeah,
all of those. So we're going to actually scale up this bit. Access to free training schemes, events,
yeah,
workshops, competitions, grants, stuff like that. Anything that will help them
yeah,
learn more about how to, I guess, give them an edge maybe on getting a career in the creative industries, help them dip their toe in the water, get the skills that they need in order to be
yeah,
able to do that. And then finally the get work bit, that's like internships and apprenticeships, and then a couple of entry level jobs, but we're not heavy on that bit. It's more just kind of, the
yeah,
first like step in.
yeah.
But the interesting thing about the app, and this is the important thing to say, is that we actually don't create any of that stuff ourselves. So
Hmm.
what we recognized, the problem that young people were having when we decided to pivot back in when the pandemic hit, we did a lot of research with our audience who were coming to our events, and we were like, what actually is the
Yeah,
issue? Why are you coming to our events? Like, what is the gap there in your kind of, why can't you do that at home? Why aren't you accessing all of the stuff that
yeah,
you do our events at, from the comfort of your own bedroom or wherever it is? And
mm,
they were like, we really struggle to find anything that is helpful for us on the internet.
mm,
Like, where do we look? Like, social media is saturated, so if you type in
yeah,
anything, you get rubbish coming up. Google is just based on good SEO. It's not based on what actually is most relevant to you.
yeah,
And then jobs boards are, normally for everything from, above where we're looking for. We're just looking for the entry bit.
yeah,
So it seemed to be that all of the platforms that they were using were inefficient, not designed for what they wanted. And so they were coming to our events to like get all of that learning information and like the training schemes, the upskilling bit and all of that kind of stuff. And so
yeah,
we were like, all we need to do is we just need to be a kind of collection. We need to collect all the stuff for them from across the
yeah,
internet and then bring it all into one centralized hub so that they can browse really easily,
yeah,
choose what's right for them. And so that's what the app is. We actually don't create any of the stuff ourselves. We
mm,
just scout for all of the best stuff that can be helpful for them in the creative industries across the internet.
yeah,
And we just link to it all on the app. And it works so well. People love it. Saves them like
yeah,
hours of time of searching online.
yeah. It just makes perfect sense as well. You're like, well, of course,
Discovery platform.
yeah. Um, um, what do you think, sort of for you, what has put you in good stead throughout your career so far? What do you think, yeah, has helped you to bounce back, thrive, create the thing that you wished had been there, perhaps when you were
Yeah.
at college?
I think there's a couple of things. I think I am like a dog with a bone when I like figure out when I see a problem or something.
Yeah,
I'm like such a nosy Parker. Like if
yeah,
there's a question I want to answer, I will like be like, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. Like it's
yeah,
so annoying. I'm such a nuisance. And like, I am like a dog with a bone when I see that there's a problem that needs to be solved. Like, I can't sleep until I solve it. And I feel like what is interesting about Eric is that we all come across problems in our lives, right? Where we're like, oh, you could solve that. But then it doesn't always get the reaction that you're like, oh, well, that definitely needs to be. Sometimes you're like, probably needs to be solved, but maybe not today, you know?
Yeah.
With Eric, the problem that we're solving is like every time we speak to anyone about it, it's like, oh my God, I needed that, or I need
Yeah.
that. I know someone that needs that.
Yeah.
And the reaction is just so phenomenally positive every single time that I'm like, I know this is a problem that needs solving. And so
Yeah.
I'm still like a dog with a bone, 7 years. I'm like, not gonna let it go.
Yeah.
I'd say that is like the passion and the obsession with what we do is really like every time I failed with Eric,
Yeah.
I feel like we pick ourselves back up and do it again. But then in a
Yeah.
wider context, throughout the whole of my life,
Yeah.
I think I have a real problem with authority.
Yeah. Mark of a true artist.
I do. Just a typical person, I think, probably. I'm also not very good at being an artist. I feel I'm just probably not a very good artist. But I just like, I cannot have someone tell me what to do. And that was very transparent in a classroom environment, very transparent in a uni environment, very transparent in a work environment. I think I got to a point where I was like, I've learned enough, like I've learned all I can here, so I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
And that basically throughout my whole life is actually like given me the confidence, or like it's more like the indignance, I would say, like pursue my own career path, because I'm like, well, fuck you, like I'm just gonna do my own thing. And I think there's a kind of like, yeah, I would say like a kind of I don't want to say like arrogance, but like, people who are immature often have it, right? Where they're like, I know best. I'm still living that. Like, I still have that.
I think though it's sort of within that there's something that's sort of so encouraging. It's that if you feel like you don't fit, or this doesn't work, or like there's something better out there for you, or you're an indignant dog with a bone, but it's possible. I think this is what I really take from what you've had to say. And many people are put in those positions where they feel like in education they're told that no, you're not good enough for this, or you won't be that. And then they go into the workplace and they're told, no, you can't have a 5 in your annual review because you can't do this. And then you're like, well, I'm not inherently a bad person. I have
Yeah,
we all have something to offer the world, and you've found a way to make that come to life.
absolutely.
Um,
Honestly, I think that actually is such a wonderful way of putting it. Like no one is a bad person. They're just not in the environment that is they're able to thrive in. And that is exactly it. And I think I always knew that like people were like, it's so bad to say, but like they were trying to fit. I was like a round, what do you call it, a square peg, and they were trying to fit me into a
yeah.
round hole. And I was just like, no, I don't want to go in the round hole. Like, where's all my square peggers? And
Yeah.
I feel like there's, that was the great thing I think about. Don't regret any of my journey, definitely, because I've learned so much along the way, and I kind of, people need to know earlier on than they are told that there are lots of square peg people over here, so you can go and
Yeah.
tribe. But everyone is kind of, I told that they need to fit in a box, again, and it's like some of us don't like boxes.
No, but I love that. I used to know early on that it's going to be all right, and there's a load of square peg people over there. What's next? Is it without, frightening any investors? Have you got a sense of what's to come, or something you would like to
Yes.
happen?
Yeah, so like obviously the aim is to grow the app as much as possible. Like we genuinely want it to be in the hands of every young person whenever they want it. Like
Yeah.
and I think that is our big aim across the UK. globally as well, you know, everyone is experiencing the same issue still, which is no one really knows what the creative industries is and how
Yeah.
lucrative the careers are. And so like there is a growing demand for the product that we have created, and
Yeah.
we see that there's a growing demand because we have more and more people downloading the app every single day,
Yeah.
and more and more people wanting to work with us as well, more and more companies who are part of the
Yeah.
creative industries being like, can I please, you know, show my internship to your young people, because we are a very rich and, you know, amazing company in the creative industries and no one knows we exist. You know, like,
Yeah.
and so like
Yeah.
more requests like that every single day. So there's a definite need for what we do, and so just scaling that up basically. But
Okay.
on because I'm a little bit ADHD and I, you know, love a project, I've
Yeah.
actually just become, I just feel like it's fun to say this, just become a qualified yoga instructor.
Namaste.
Namaste indeed. Being able to say that, like and so for me as a side thing, I'm basically teaching yoga, and it keeps me much more calm than this is me on a calm day, just so you know.
I've been doing yoga with Adrian quite a while, but I think I'd be signing up for yoga with Sam because,
Oh my
high
gosh,
energy.
you'll be my first and only client.
Wow. Um, and it would be wrong of me not to ask. Eric, is it an acronym?
Yes, of
What?
course.
Why the name? Yeah.
Two questions that we always get immediately, so I'm surprised it's taken this long because
Yeah.
which is, what is that? Well, who is Eric? Where did the name come from? And second is, how do you make money? People
Yeah.
are perplexed by that. So ERIC is an acronym. It stands for Empower, Represent, Immerse, and Create, which are the 4 pillars of ERIC, if you will. And we want everyone to feel at least, one of those things when they download the ERIC app. So it's very important. Those values are very, very important to us.
Yeah. Nice. How do you make money then? You put it out there.
I knew it was coming. So companies pay us to advertise things like internships, training programs, mentoring schemes, competitions, stuff like that. Anything careers related like that on the
Yeah.
app. So
Perfect. And so when people download the app on their favorite app store, what should they be searching for?
great question. ERIC Creative Careers. But I think if you just type ERIC Careers, it comes up. We're actually in number, I want to say 6 on the, maybe even lower than that. Maybe we're 4 on the list of recommended career apps on the store, if you guys want to check it out.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'll speak to my sixth former, get her to download it,
Yes,
give you a rating, share it around.
absolutely. Only 5 stars are accepted, by the way. So.
Only 5. Only 5. I mean, only 5 stars. I mean, that's the only rating there is, surely.
If it's under 5 stars, we don't want
Yeah.
it.
And so if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to offer investment or feedback, or they want to know more, where can they find you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So please do connect with me, Samantha Hornsby. If you want to take a look at what Eric does on social media, you can have a look on Instagram or TikTok. The handle is at the Eric app. And then if you want to just check out our website, that's meet, MEET hyphen eric.com, ERIC.com.
Lovely. Well, I've just really enjoyed this, Sam. I think it's one of my favorite episodes. It's been fun. Fun.
Really enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for interviewing me. I've wonderful questions. I feel it's lovely to go down memory lane and look at my, back at my journey. It's very
Yeah.
important.
Well, and maybe, give it a couple of years when you've gone global. I'll have you back on. We're manifesting. We're just going to do it.
So many positive vibes coming from this. I agree. We've got to manifest these things. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Sam.
Thanks so much.
Right. Why can't I find? They've moved the stop button.